Hello and welcome. Today we're tackling a huge question for apparel factories everywhere. You know, your most reliable machines, the ones that have been the backbone of your floor for maybe 30 years. They work great, but your business needs real-time data and it needs it now. So, how do you make those old machines smart without a massive budget-breaking replacement project? Well, let's dive in.
This quote really gets right to the heart of the problem, doesn't it? The biggest thing holding back a smart factory isn't your old equipment, not at all. It's asking your most skilled operators to stop what they're doing, stop sewing, stop producing, and become data entry clerks. It just kills the rhythm. It's frustrating, and you know what? It just doesn't work.
So, here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to unpack why manual data is such a problem. Then we'll get into this whole philosophy of retrofit, don't replace. From there, we'll open up the actual toolkit you'll need, the sensors and hardware, and then, the big one, we'll put a real budget to it. And finally, we'll lay out a clear roadmap to get you from here to a smarter factory.
Okay, so why exactly is manual entry such a recipe for failure? Well, think about it. Every single time you ask an operator to stop their flow, to look away from the garment and type something into a screen, even something quick, you're creating friction. It breaks their concentration, it slows them down, and frankly, it builds resentment. And the data you end up getting? It's often late, it's incomplete, or sometimes it's just plain wrong.
So this is the absolute key takeaway. The success of any manufacturing execution system, your MES, which is basically the digital brain of your factory, it all boils down to one simple rule. The system has to be automatic. You've got to remove the burden of data entry from the people who are actually making the clothes, period.
And that leads us to this really important shift in thinking. The goal here is not to throw out your trusted, reliable machines that you've had for decades. No way. The goal is to make them observable. It's about giving them a digital voice so they can finally tell you exactly what they're doing in real time.
And here's how we do it. This is the core idea. Think of these little sensors as translators. Your old machines are constantly talking to you through their physical language. You know, the hum of a motor, the movement of a needle, the tension in the fabric. Sensors are what translate that silent physical language into digital data that your MES can finally understand and use. It's brilliant.
So how does that translation actually happen? Well, it's a pretty straightforward three-step process. First, you've got the sensor. It captures a physical action, like the machine starting up. That signal then goes to an IoT gateway. You can just think of this as a little central hub that collects and organizes all that data from the sensors. And finally, your MES receives that clean, perfectly formatted information, giving you a crystal clear, real-time view of your factory floor. It's a really simple but powerful flow of information.
Okay, enough theory. Let's get practical and move on to the factory floor. What specific tools do you actually need to make all this happen? We're going to walk through the essential sensors for each key stage of production, and let's start where it all begins, in the cutting room. For your cutting machines, the solutions are actually pretty simple. You want to know if a machine is running or stopped? A basic current transformer, or a CT sensor, just claps right onto a power cable, and boom, you know instantly. What about tracking blade wear? A simple proximity sensor can count every single cut, which means you can schedule maintenance before a blade fails and ruins a batch of fabric.
Now the sewing floor. This is where things get really powerful. An RFID reader lets an operator log in automatically just by tapping their badge. That same CT sensor we talked about can go on the motor to track every single second of uptime and downtime. And get this, a tiny photoelectric sensor can detect a thread break instantly, automatically logging the exact reason for the stoppage without anyone having to touch a keyboard. It's a game changer.
And in those final stages, like finishing an inspection, we can lock down quality and compliance. A thermocouple sensor makes sure an iron is at the perfect temperature for a specific fabric. A pressure sensor counts every single press cycle so you have an accurate count of finished garments. And a simple push-button station lets inspectors log different types of defects with a single touch, which automatically calculates your first pass yield.
The main goal across all of these stages is to achieve something called invisible data capture. That means the information, all that valuable data, becomes a natural byproduct of the work itself. The system is so seamless that your team doesn't even feel like they're interacting with it. They just do their jobs and the data just happens.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory, right? But I know what you're thinking. What does it actually cost? So let's get down to brass tacks and talk about the most important section for any factory manager, the budget. We're going to break down the real-world investment for a single pilot line.
First things first, let's define what we're talking about. We're not trying to boil the ocean here. We're talking about one typical sewing line,
around 20 to 25 workstations. And the goal for this pilot isn't 100% automation overnight. It's a very achievable and massive reduction in manual data entry. We're aiming for over 80%. So, here's the number. Based on real case studies, the total estimated investment to fully retrofit one of these pilot lines is somewhere between 300,000 and 700,000 Chinese yuan. And this isn't just a wild guess. It's a tangible, concrete budget range that you can actually work with.
Now here's a really critical insight into that cost. It's not just about buying a bunch of gadgets. The investment is split almost perfectly down the middle. About 50% for the physical gear, the sensors, the tablets, the cables, and the other 50% for the software, the customization, and the services that actually make it all work together.
Let's dig into that hardware budget a little deeper. And what's interesting here is that the actual data collection hardware, the sensors themselves, is a pretty small part of the overall cost. The biggest piece of the pie is actually the workstation terminals, the tablets and screens that your team will use every day. This gives you a really clear picture of where the money goes for the physical components.
All right, so you've got a budget in hand. Now what? How do you actually execute this? Because you don't transform an entire factory overnight. So let's move to our final section and see how this builds into a smart, phased roadmap for success.
The best way to do this is to start small and build momentum. Phase 1 is that quick 2 to 3 month pilot on a single line. The goal is just to prove the concept and get some quick wins. Once you have those results, Phase 2 is all about scaling that proven solution across the rest of the factory. And only then, in Phase 3, do you start using all that amazing data for advanced stuff like predictive maintenance and AI-driven insights.
So if you're going to remember just one thing from all this, let it be this simple 4-part structure. First, sensors read what the machines are doing. Second, gateways collect and organize all that data. Third, tablets at the workstation add the human context, like who is working on what order. And finally, everything gets sent to your central system using a common digital language. That's the whole system, right there in a nutshell. And the ultimate result of all of this? It's a profound sense of simplicity. You free your operators to focus on their craft, on their skill, on quality, on the things they do best. They can just work, and the smart system humming along in the background takes care of everything else.
Which brings us to our final question. This whole idea of digital transformation, it isn't really about buying shiny new machines. It's about learning to listen to the ones you already have. They are full of valuable information, just waiting to tell you how to be more efficient, more productive. The only real question left is, are you ready to listen?